Hi, and welcome to Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. I'm Steve Palmer, and I invite you to join me as we explore the stories behind leaders in the hospitality industry and beyond. Say Grace is a place to reflect, connect, and savor thoughtful narratives. Everyone has a seat at our table. So pull up a chair and let's discover the transformative power of hospitality together. Hey everybody, and welcome to Say Grace. I'm Steve Palmer, and welcome to the place where we unpack all things hospitality, service, restaurants, food, design, PR, all the cool shit. I'm so excited about my guest today. I'm going to read your bio. I'm excited to welcome Brooks Reitz, a dynamic and design-focused hospitality expert, to the show today. Brooks is a restaurateur entrepreneur based in Charleston, South Carolina, and the founder and partner behind beloved restaurants, including Leon's Oyster Shop, Little Jack's Tavern, Melfi's, spaces that blend comfort, character, and timeless design. He is also the founder of Jack Rudy Cocktail Co, a brand that helped shape the craft cocktail movement, say that fast 3 times, by reimagining classic bar staples for the home bartender. Brooks' approach to shows that hospitality isn't just service, it's art, a philosophy, and a way to make people feel genuinely cared for. Welcome to Say Grace.
Thank you for having me.
So good to see you.
It's a blast. I was thinking on the way over here, I'm like, we've known each other for
A decade,
15, 16 years, you know, going back to when I moved to Charleston to work at Fig. And I'm like, this will be one of the longest times we've just been able to sit down and chat one-on-one.
I know.
You know, because it's always at events or you know, fundraisers and industry stuff. So this is a treat. I've been looking forward to this.
We text often because I think you're one of the hippest, coolest guys in the industry. No, I'm serious. And I'll be somewhere and hey, Brooks, I'm going to London. Where do I go eat? You're like my guru for all things cool.
I appreciate that. I do like, I feel like a lot of people use me as a resource, whether or not my tips or whatever suggestions work out for people, but I like that.
Good.
And I'm a discoverer and I like to share. So that means a lot that people would trust me to like ask me those things.
Yeah. I read your Substack also.
Yes, yeah.
How'd you find food? This is the one question I sort of begin our dialogue. I ask every guest, how did you find food?
Like a lot of people probably, I grew up around food, but I had an interesting exposure to food. We weren't, my parents were not necessarily foodies per se,
right?
But food was important in our house. We did not go out to eat at restaurants. By virtue of not having the money to do it. I mean, it was two working parents, three boys. We lived on a big farm in Kentucky, and my parents still live there. And both of my parents were good cooks, and their whole thing was always like, we would sit down to dinner, and that was very important. We ate together every night at the table, and I've continued to do that, you know, now with my family. But my mom would always say, this is so much better than what we would get in a restaurant, you know, and cheaper. They're very frugal, and so food was important to me, and you know, just grew up with 2 parents who they were not fancy. They're not really gourmands, but they like fresh food, real food. We didn't eat out fast food or anything like that. And that was my first really exposure. My grandmother lived next door, and she was a great cook in the sort of Southern tradition, biscuits and greens and, you know, kind of like soul food adjacent, really great stuff. And that's how I found food. And my dad he was kind of a frustrated restaurateur. He had owned a bar in Memphis, Tennessee before I was born. That was just not a fancy place, you know, a little bit better than a dive bar, but not by much. And he sold it, and then he was gonna open a restaurant before my older brother was born. And when my older brother was born, I think my mom was kind of like, I don't know that restaurant hours are going to work for a family.
Right.
And he pivoted away from that. And I grew up hearing the lore of the restaurant that he was going to open,
Right.
and we had blueprints framed in our
Oh,
living
wow.
room at home. And so that, I think, just permeated my childhood, and that's kind of the soup that I grew up in.
That's a good fertile ground for a restaurateur.
Totally.
You know, what was your first restaurant job?
My first restaurant job was so it was actually at the country club in our town. I was a busboy and food runner, busboy, dishwasher. This is a small town in Kentucky, so when I say country club, it's not like a country club in Charleston or in Atlanta or a major city. This is pretty light, country club light, and that was my first job. And I wouldn't say that I got the gig because my best friend was working there, and he lived in the little neighborhood where the country club was located. And at that time, it wasn't something I was like, oh, I'm interested in food or I'm interested in restaurants. It was more like I want a job. I want some spending money.
Right.
And I worked at the country club until I went to college.
I love that. I talk a lot about light bulb moments.
Mm-hmm.
That moment, I have had a couple. The first was when somebody said to me, Steve, people don't go out to dinner to eat. They go out to have an experience. I was 22 years old.
Yeah.
There was no internet yet, so this was profound. They go out to feel something. That was a light bulb moment. And then I was like 26. It was my 26th birthday. I had been very focused on wine for about 4 years.
You're living in Atlanta at this time?
I was living here.
Okay.
I had opened, we had worked at Magnolia's, opened Blossom, and then I was about to move back to open Canoe in Atlanta as the wine director. But it was my birthday, and we took 3 cases of wine to a lake house and drank too much. But that was a light bulb moment of like, I guess this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life, right?
Like at the lake house?
Yeah, because, back then it was a lot, and it still is, but not as much. You would hear in the restaurant, well, this is just what I'm doing until I get a real job.
Totally. Or until I get the acting thing,
or
the my art career takes off. Yeah.
And I'm like working 14 hours. I was working doubles all the time, and I'm like, shit, man, this feels real.
Totally.
I had also developed a deep passion for wine. Had already been to Napa Valley once. But so I finally was sort of like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing. Do you remember a light bulb moment for you where you were just like, okay, I'm where I belong?
Yeah, for sure. I went to college, I got a job, worked all through college. Like I said, I came from a humble background, but lovely upbringing. But when I went to college, my parents were not gonna pay if I wanted to live in a place on my own or if I wanted money to go out, and I had to get a job. So I worked all through college at a great restaurant in Lexington, Kentucky. And I dug it. I was good at it.
UK?
I went to a small school called Transylvania University.
Okay.
It's about a mile down the street from UK.
Cool.
And worked in what was really the best restaurant in Lexington that probably still is, called Dudley's, still around. Great restaurant, huge with the horse scene in that area. Yeah. So it was kind of my first exposure to sort of like a restaurant that wealthy people went to, with a deep wine list, and I'm selling Opus 1 to people.
Right.
In my later years there, started as a busser and a food runner, and I realized I was good at it, and I think part of that was because I have a strong work ethic, just having grown up in a kind of rural environment. We had to do work on our big property, pick weeds and, mow the lawn and all this kind of stuff. And so my parents, they instilled that in me. And so I think I excelled at that because I was just a hard worker.
Right.
And I always thought I was going to be a writer. I was studying English and drama, and I kind of considered myself more of an artist than a businessman.
I think that's still kind of true.
For sure, yeah. Those are definitely two poles that sort of are kind of at war sometimes, and oftentimes they work together. But the light bulb moment really happened when I booked a plane ticket. I'd never been to New York before. And having grown up in a little town, I was culture obsessed through music, through movies. On Friday nights, my friends and I would go to Barnes and Noble, and I would read GQ magazine and Vanity Fair, and I became kind of, and I still am. I'm culture obsessed. And I booked a plane ticket to go to New York by myself. I was 19 years old, and it was fall break. And I fly to New York, and I had booked a hostel in Harlem. I got there at night, went to the hostel, and I had traveled at this point. I had gone to Europe because I dated a foreign exchange student my last year in high school. So I had traveled a little bit at that point. But anyway, go to this hostel in Harlem. It's dark. The hostel is dingy. And I'm like, I've made a big mistake. I call my mom. I'm crying. I'm like, Mom, I messed up. I don't want to be here. This is kind of scary, you know?
Right.
She's like, when the sun comes up in the morning, it's all going to seem normal and fun and exciting. And if you need, why don't you get in a cab and go to Times Square? There'll be tons of people around. So I did that at night. It was like 9:30. I go to Times Square, and it's like, oh my God, total crazy moment. The next day, I wake up. The sun is out. It's good. New York's not as scary anymore. I think I take the subway down to Soho, and I had read about this restaurant, Balthazar.
Yeah.
And the light bulb moment to finally get to it was walking into Balthazar. Keith is so smart. He's like covered the windows on the side. When you enter that restaurant, the world is behind you, and
Completely.
you are now on his stage set. Yeah. And being a theater guy and a writer and someone who was like interested in creating his own world, I walked into Balthazar, and it was the first time I realized, wow, restaurants can absolutely be theater,
Yes.
film, music, all the stuff I love. You can do that. And it's not because the places I grew up around were like humble burger,
right,
divey places.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where I realized, wow, I'm good at this restaurant thing. I like it. It's kind of combines a lot of the things I'm into. And here's proof that you can like think bigger in this context. And that was the moment where I was like, I think I might commit myself to this in a bigger way.
I love that. Your light bulb moment was cooler than. See, I'm always texting you, going, "You're so much cooler than me."
No,
Balthazar. So at the Indigo Road, and I could line in this room with 500 people that would tell you about my obsession with lighting.
For sure.
And I'm always like, warm ambient glow. To me, it's very simple.
Absolutely.
Warm ambient glow. And Balthazar is where
masterclass.
I was like, it's warm and ambient.
Absolutely.
And yet still, after how many restaurants, I'll walk in and there's a white light. And I'm like, warm ambient glow.
For sure. Totally. My crew knows I'm about kindness, cleanliness, and lighting. And music.
And music.
Music level.
Lights
especially.
down, music up.
Totally.
Usually.
And I'm for years, it was until I sort of like trained the kind of my main kind of lieutenants that I work with. First thing I would do when I walk in the restaurant, the lights got to come down. And Keith McNally is he's a lighting guru. He knows it. He knows it well, and I've taken a lot of cues from him over the years.
Have you read his book? I'm kind of getting off our timeline, but
no, I was obsessed.
What'd you think?
So it's like you don't want to meet.
I regret almost everything. This is the book, in case you don't know who we're talking about.
Yeah, Keith McNally, great writer. I loved the book because I admire him. He's a great writer. He's very funny, self-deprecating. I dig all that. His Instagram. His Instagram has like dissolved some of the romance, only because he can be so mean-spirited sometimes.
He can.
But I still very much admire his work and his intelligence and his what he's culturally like meant for restaurants and for New York City. I just sort of like I still sort of hold him up on a kind of on a mantle, but I really loved the book because I'm obsessed with New York and I'm obsessed with that era and that restaurant
That
and
era of
celebrity
yeah.
and the media and Anna Wintour and the sexiness around that.
Right.
That's like so cool to me.
Yeah.
Having grown up in a rural kind of environment, I'm like, that's the world that I sort of like dreamed of when I was younger. So I devoured it.
I love that. There was a sadness to it. You know, he struggled with depression and you know, there was the divorces, the way he talks about. There was a sadness to it that I didn't. That was unexpected.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I thought it was really a brilliant book. But I'm like you. I mean, Soho still is my favorite neighborhood in New York. Because of the cobblestone streets. I think I've texted you from the Mercer Hotel before.
Great hotel.
Great hotel. It needs they need to refresh it, but it's a great hotel. So Balthazar is in that same sort of ideological, romantic, aspirational thing. You know, that
I'll say in recent years, I have drifted less, so kind of away from Balthazar. And I think now I would say my kind of favorite of that ilk that he used to be involved in is the Odeon. We go to the Odeon every time we go to New York.
I haven't been in a while.
Just a great room, different room, but that same just cool, buzzy New York City energy. There's a certain tone and tenor in the air in these types of New York restaurants, and it's what people talk about. It's the clinking of the glass and the hum of conversation and the like symphony, and that is intoxicating to me. So I love those, like going to those places. And if I ever am feeling cynical or down on the restaurant business, a trip to New York will like refill my coffers.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. So from Dudley's in Lexington to your trip to New York, how did you end up in Charleston? Was that?
Yeah, so in between the Kentucky experience and Charleston, my senior year of college, I would go to the library on campus, and they had the New York Times, subscription. And again, this is a theme here. I would go there and I would read the New York Times, and I was reading it one day, and there was a little piece about Drew Nieperantz and the Myriad Restaurant Group, who have Tribeca Grill, Nobu, Rubicon, Montrachet, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Not all those now, obviously, but they were opening a restaurant in a hotel in Louisville, Kentucky, and it was called the 21C Museum Hotel. They're no longer involved, but they were kind of the management group opening that. I read that article and I'm like, oh my God, wow, this is like a big city, amazing New York restaurant group is opening an hour away. And, I'm a month away from graduating or whatever it was. So I decided I was going to go try to get a job there. And I graduated. We threw a big party at our house. All our parents were there. Next morning, car was already packed. I put my final stuff in, and I drove to Louisville, Kentucky, where my older brother was living, and I moved in with him. And I think the next day I, polished up my resume, and I went to 21C Museum Hotel, and Proof was the name of the restaurant, and I applied for a job, and I got a job. I was bartending, daytime bartender, and by virtue of a number of circumstances, within about a year and a half, I went from daytime bartender to general manager.
Holy crap.
Of a 7-day-a-week breakfast, lunch, dinner, room service, hotel, restaurant.
Right.
And talk about trial by fire. Like, I learned a ton. And I was mentored by sort of Drew's top lieutenant, which is a guy named Michael Bonadies, who I'm still very close with. And I learned a lot, and I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, I'm 22 by the time I think I became the GM, 22 or 23.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, I don't know how to manage people, and I'm managing people who are 50 years old, holding them accountable, having to discipline them. So that was there's certainly some sloppy, I've always been a deep down a nice person, but I was, it's like when you're 23, you can't really control your temper as well.
Right.
So there was a lot of learning on the job there. then I moved to Charleston. So I was the GM there for a couple of years. Then I was having a child. I had a son who was born 16 years ago, and I was not married to his mother, but she was moving to Charleston, and she was going to have her baby in Charleston. And so I moved to Charleston because I wanted to be close to my son and help raise him and have a hand in that. So I moved to Charleston and really kind of started over. Walked into Fig in the middle of the day. Adam Nimero was there. Had put together my resume. Fortunately for me, now and at that time it wasn't easy to get into Fig,
not,
and it's
no.
still not really. It's a great job. But Adam's girlfriend, now wife, was from Louisville, and her dad, Bim, who's passed away, was a restaurant guy. And Adam had been to Louisville many times, had been to Proof, liked it, and he was like, "Oh, this is a serious place you're coming from, and you were the GM. That's cool.
Right.
You're hired." So I got a job as a bartender at Fig. And that was the same kind of thing, by virtue of somebody above me shooting themselves in the foot or whatever, and performing and being reliable and showing up on time. Within a couple of years, I had moved from bartender and server to manager to assistant GM to then general manager, and I worked with Mike and Adam for, gosh, it's all kind of blurry, but 5, maybe 6 years. Opened the Ordinary with those guys. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's when we got to know one another. And again, that's, I think I really came into my own in that time. Really, I think I can look back and say I had a really amazing impact on the service at Fig specifically. Yeah. I felt for the first time, I was like, wow, I'm really good at this. I felt like I had really impacted that restaurant when I left, in a really positive way. And I think those guys would say the same thing. We're still close friends, and I love those guys, and they still operate exceptional restaurants.
Yeah,
they do. And that was kind of my Charleston journey until I left to go open my own thing.
Do your own thing.
Yeah.
But in between that, this little thing happened.
Yes.
Which to me,
I did gloss over a big part of my story.
And because we opened the cocktail club. It was 2011. It was June 24th on 2011. And I feel like Jack Rudy was 6 months before that, a year before that. You were just
somewhere around there.
Started to, and I remember I read GQ and Esquire and all the same things. And I remember there was an article, because I saw you at one point. I'm like, who's doing your PR? That was right in that gap where print media hadn't completely imploded the way it has now.
For sure. No, still a vital place.
It was still getting a mention in Bone App.
Oh, huge.
Massive. And I was like, who's doing your PR? And you were like, nobody. People are just... So how did the idea to make... It wasn't even like you made a cherry syrup. I mean, you've since made it, but quinine.
Quinine, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That actually started when I was in Kentucky. So for the listeners out there, I started with tonic syrup for a gin and tonic.
Yeah.
And the quick kind of backstory there is I was living in Kentucky managing Proof, and we had a really deep spirits selection, way more than I'd ever sort of had worked around. And a big part of the kind of ethos of that bar program was American spirits, American craft spirits, which was really still very early to that.
Yeah.
And we had a deep selection of gin. And I knew Bombay Sapphire, Beefeater, Tanqueray, right? Those were the ones that I knew.
Right.
And here I am now working at a bar where we have 18 gins, all these different styles. And we had a really cool spirits book that had descriptions, and our customers would peruse that, and they'd say, I'll have a gin and tonic, but I'll have it with this, this aviation gin out of Portland, Oregon. This was when it was a small brand.
Right.
And they'd pay a premium for that. and then we'd make that gin and tonic, and we'd just put the tonic from the gun in it. And my sort of like thing was my realization was like, okay, like if somebody's going to pay $4 extra for this gin and this gin and tonic, they'd pay like an extra $1 for a premium tonic.
Yeah.
And the premium tonic thing, Fever Tree existed at this time, but it was not distributed in America at that point. It was only in England. And I had tried to like track it down to get it shipped to us. And Q was not around yet. So I started making my own tonic. And that was just, it's like, how do you make tonic? I just researched online, found some different recipes, cobbled together my own little thing, and started serving it at the restaurant, not as a brand, but as just a house-made tonic for an upcharge. And it was a success. People dug it, and this was early days, cocktail renaissance. It's,
right.
It had been in New York and LA, but like in a city like Louisville, people are like very like, what, you're making your own tonic? Like, this is amazing. What? Tell me how you do that.
Right.
Very engaged. So when I moved to Charleston and got a job at Fig, as those guys would probably say, when I started there, like Mike was an exceptional chef and Adam had great taste in wine, but the cocktail program was terrible. And it's because they had just recently moved from airplane bottles to the big bottles.
Right.
So the development of like this taste and sort of navigating like proper cocktails had not happened, because it was like we were living in a city where someone was like, tiny bottle of Tanqueray and tonic. There was no mixing Negronis, because you couldn't get a little bottle of Campari and little bottle of vermouth. Right. So yeah, it was missing that craft. And so I set about to like rework our cocktail program, because I was very into cocktails at the time. And I said to the guys, I said, I was making my own tonic in Kentucky. People loved it. I want to start doing that here. And they were cool. They gave me a lot of runway there. And so started making it first as just selling it as like a house-made tonic. But then the reaction, Charleston's different than Louisville. We have so many tourists, so many well-heeled tourists, curious, informed tourists from New York, from Los Angeles, from Chicago, from Atlanta. So lots of people asking questions. Can I buy? Are you selling this tonic? Can I take it home? I love it. It's the best G&T I've ever had. And that was the second light bulb moment where I thought I should bottle this and make this a brand. And that's going to be an opportunity for me to do the thing I love the most, which is tell a story, brand something, design something, create something from nothing. Right. And I, at that point, couldn't open my own restaurant. I didn't have the money or the wherewithal to do it. So this was a thing to call my own. And so I started Jack Rudy when I was at Fig. You were a huge early supporter. You were obviously the guys at Fig were great, and Sean Brock was an early adopter too, putting it into his restaurants. And those, that support, being in the best restaurants in Charleston, when Charleston was much smaller, different vibe then, meant that I was being exposed to all the best food media. We're going to come and eat at this, the same kind of 6-7 restaurants, whatever. And I think I piggybacked off of that excitement for Charleston. The product was good. People loved it. The branding was nice, and it took off. And so through the time at Fig to the Ordinary, I was grinding so hard. I would wake up in the morning. I would work on Jack Rudy. I would go to work a 10 to potentially 12-hour shift at the restaurant, close it down in many cases, and then I would go home and I would continue to work on Jack Rudy, making it, packaging it, shipping it out, shipping out orders, and I just really put all my energy and effort, and I didn't go out. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have a social life. And a big part of that goes back to having a child at a young age. That matured me very quickly. Yeah. And I remember thinking I'm going to be a success for my son. Because it's a complicated backstory for a different podcast, but I had roommates. It became difficult to bring my son to my house, and so we had to spend our time in my car, like our visitation. So I'd pick him up in the morning. We'd go park at Kids R Us, and he'd run nap in the thing. Then we'd go inside. I'd like buy diapers. We'd go to Starbucks. And I was just like, this is not the life that I want. And I'm going to hustle and I'm going to be a success. And there was like a good 8 to 10 year period where I really worked hard and I made it happen. And I grew that business to be successful.
Were you surprised by the success of Jack Rudy?
I was surprised because I don't have a business, I don't have traditional business training. I've learned now at 41, looking back, I have good intuition and I think I can read the tea leaves and I can sort of track where things are going and I can communicate my ideas well. But at the time I was figuring this out.
Right.
And I was, super surprised. And I left the ordinary because I was going to go just continue to grow Jack Rudy full time and just continue to work on that business. And that's when the opportunity came up to get involved with what is now Leon's.
Which was a rocket ship out of the
lightning in a bottle. Yeah, really. It's
oysters and fried chicken. Who knew?
Who'd have thunk it? Oh man. We're 11, almost 12 years in now. It's a once in a lifetime type of business. It feels like Balthazar to me. I'm like, when I, and I'm very proud of all my spots, but Leon's is the kind of thing that kind of, I feel like it sort of quickly reached institution status. And it has the potential in my eyes to be around for 30, 40 years.
Oh yeah, of course.
And that was, I think, a combination of the fun, kind of interesting location, the opening chef I had, who was really great, the team I opened with, the design of the place, which is fun and funky. And yeah, that's been a very important part of my life. And that quickly, I was like, I'm going to work on Jack Rudy. I opened Leon's and I was like, oh shit, I'm a restaurateur again. I'm in the restaurant business. And I said to my business partner, Jack Rudy, who's still my partner, I was like, you have to run this thing because I'm in restaurants again.
Yeah.
And now 11 or 12 years later, still the case.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's been a fun adventure.
I can remember, you're an entrepreneurial guy. I am too. I can remember you opened a coffee bar called St. Albans that I loved.
Thank you.
And it didn't work financially. I've opened things that have not worked financially.
Yeah.
Might do it again.
For sure.
What's that? Talk about, because I don't think future restaurant owners, it looks very glamorous.
I've talked a lot of people out of certain concepts or approaches.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm telling you from experience,
Yeah, our Market Cafe, Mercantile and Mash, every developer in the country has called me about that place. And I'm like, we really don't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
We make money on the events upstairs. Like, if you're not going to build an event space, don't build a coffee bar because And
it's funny because in our business, I have a lot of conversations and it's sort of like in a lot of rooms, money is the big bad topic, right? And it's like, oh, well, if you care about money or making money or being profitable as a restaurant, then you're obviously not committed to the culture and the art and the soul. And I'm like, you work as hard on a coffee shop that makes no money as you do a steakhouse that makes you a lot of money.
Correct.
And
you might work harder
exactly
on the one that doesn't
more
make
stress,
money.
More late nights and sleepless
less hourly employees because you can't afford it and
totally
all the things.
And I'm like, I just don't want to spend my time because that that profit, of course, is like great from a personal perspective, right?
Sure.
But like that supports. if you have a restaurant that makes money, it means you can fix your ovens when they break. It means you can repaint the place. It means you can repoint the bricks on the patio. You can invest in landscaping. You can give raises. You can afford to,
Preach,
do
brother,
all the
preach.
stuff.
Oh,
And
my God.
and if you've got a cool little thing that doesn't make any money, unless you're a mom and pop operator who's in there doing the work yourself.
You basically created a salary for yourself.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And I've never been interested in that because
Right.
I'm as you said, I'm entrepreneurial. I like
a Renaissance man.
I like to do multiple things. I'm curious and restless and want to try out a lot of stuff. And I think that, the businesses need to work from a business perspective.
Why do you think, I talk a lot about this particular subject, why do you think it's so not sexy to talk about financial success?
My sense of it is, we're living in this like era where we're kind of like, we're entering a new phase, but it's like food media and the coverage that, of Bone App and all these, magazines that I loved and were hugely influential and still, I still read all this stuff and stay up on it. But I think that, a certain type of restaurant is the type of restaurant that like gets coverage. And it's like the sexy and the new and the flashy and the creative and the interesting. And I get it because it's fun to talk about a new 15-seat,
they keep
whatever,
getting
whatever.
Smaller though, the media darlings.
Yeah,
I don't know if
totally.
You've noticed, we're down to.
Yes, dude. I just read an article about this, about like that there was a Resi party in New York, and there's a business newsletter I read called Feed Me, and she was kind of like, I think she was co-sponsoring it, and there was a whole dining kind of recap that Resi provided to the guests, and it was saying, like restaurants on the whole are getting smaller. And especially, like there's places I love in New York. It's like 12 seats in the thing.
Right.
But it's the husband and the wife who are cooking and serving you the dishes.
There's
no other way. There's no other way.
There's no other way
those things can exist. And part of me, the artist in me is, I'll go to those places and I'll have, I'll be envious of this ability, this opportunity to sort of like do a thing that maybe you didn't, is like fully and wholly your expression, that you didn't have to like shave off any edges to meet a certain kind of, number or something.
Right.
Because my entire restaurant career has been, I love my restaurants and I'm very proud of them. And they're wonderful places we employ lots of people, but it's been a series of like shaving things that we want to do because they don't make sense.
Yeah, totally.
And so I'm, this is like, obviously this is two restaurateurs talking. And I also think for a long time and still, and I don't begrudge this at all. It's just a statement of fact. It's like chefs have ruled the roost, so to speak, in terms of like media coverage and stuff.
Right.
And I think
that happened in 2008 after the financial crisis.
That's when
the shift
shifted.
The Edison bulbs went up. The reclaimed wood came out. Fine dining died.
Yeah.
And it became about the farm and the chef.
Exactly. And
there was a whole Teutonic shift in food media right around 2008, 2009.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of that. You can trace it to that. And so we deal with this a lot in our restaurants where, the chefs that are working with me now have come up through that era, right? And so the steak that they might want to purchase is not always the one that we can afford because it's simply a matter of economics. If we buy a steak that costs X, we have to charge Y.
Right.
And oftentimes we don't have a customer that's willing to pay Y.
That's right.
So we have to find the best possible steak that's less than X that our customer that still represents, that still delivers. You get it, right?
Right.
Still has integrity, but it is, I would love to have a place where I can go and buy from the people that, frankly, that like for my house, I buy. This is the food I eat at home, right? I go buy and support local. I almost exclusively shop at the farmers markets. But I can't always, it's a balance in the restaurants.
That's right.
And it's, and getting people to understand that, like, hitting food costs and having a profitable restaurant is not a naughty thing. It means that
you're not an evil capitalist.
Totally. It means we get to give raises and we get to reinvest. And, we spend a lot of money on our existing properties. We have great landscaping, and we have great benefits. And, all of my team gets, everybody in the restaurant, hundreds of people, it's like a free, we have an account at a local bookstore, and everyone goes and gets a book of their choice every month.
Oh, I love that.
So just like little things. I'm not saying like this, of course, like one and a long list of benefits, because of course, like, it's gotten very competitive in our market. And so we're constantly revisiting our benefits, and I'm constantly calling friends, texting people. What are you guys offering? What's your situation? What are you paying your GMs? All this kind of stuff.
I always feel honored when I get those checks from other operators, because I feel like, you and I aren't, but there are people that are competitive and they've got their ego on their shoulders.
Yeah.
I've always been like, I'll tell you what our sales are.
Totally.
I'll tell you what my food cost is.
Yeah. I can attest. You've always been very, very open.
Because I want you to win.
Yeah,
and
totally.
you winning doesn't mean I'm going to lose.
100%.
And so whenever I get a text from an operator, I actually feel honored, because there's a trust thing that's happening. And I'm like, hey, man, I will tell you everything. I'll tell you what I screwed up. I'll tell you what I did right, because we have to. And I love just listening to you just now, because you've articulated it in a way that I often do. So I do a coffee and culture is these talks that I give.
Yeah.
And the last pillar of the hospitable culture is our investors. And I take the time to say, why does profit matter to y'all?
Yeah.
Because if I'm you hearing this, I probably am thinking I could care less.
Yeah, sure.
Many of you are going to want to raise. We love to say yes. We can't say yes if we're not making money.
Absolutely.
What I find, because I probably borderline stalk you, because you're like the generation behind me, and I think you're just so interesting and cool. You kind of very publicly early, which I thought was bold, because we were not in that moment, said, I'm not going to be here every night. If you're coming to this restaurant to see me, I remember reading an article, and I'm paraphrasing.
Sure.
I think Hannah Raskin had done an interview with you, and you kind of said, like, I'm going to have some balance. There's other creative pursuits that I want to do. Just talk about it. 'Cause I thought that was so bold, because I was in a period where we had 4 restaurants on King Street, and we had just opened one in Atlanta. And so what I was hearing from our regulars, we never see you anymore.
Yeah. It's not the same.
And I just felt like shit every time I heard it. But I also wanted to grow my business.
For sure.
And you just kind of came out of the gate. Maybe you were the smart one. You said, don't count on me.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
I'm passionate about this topic because a lot of, especially like a lot of young up and coming restaurateurs will ask me about this. Or my peers, not even in Charleston, guys in New York that I'm friends with. How do you manage to? Because I obviously have Jack Rudy. I write. I have this new business with my wife, so I do a lot of things. And so I get this question a lot, and I'm passionate about this. So. To rewind the tape, I knew by the time I was opening Leon's, I had met my girlfriend, now wife, and I knew I was going to marry this woman. And I'm like a very much, I'm a softie. I'm a family man. I grew up in a really great family. I knew that I already had a child, and that had matured me and I think changed a little bit of my brain makeup.
Sure.
And I knew I was going to marry this woman, and I had seen so much in the restaurant business, marriages fall apart, and relationships struggle, and just like quality of life issues that I still see, And so I think early on, I realized that if I wanted to I wanted to both own businesses and restaurants, but I also wanted to be home at night with my wife and future child having dinner at 6 o'clock. And it's like, okay, well, that's not common in the restaurant business. So
Not at all.
how do you do that? And so out of the gate, opening Leon's, I hired a general manager. So I wasn't like just going to be on the floor. And I made it very clear, like, I am an owner and I'm very involved and I am going to help you operate these businesses, but I don't work shifts. And so don't expect me to be on the schedule. Don't expect me to be here. When I'm here, but you don't think that I'm here on the floor. What I am is a valuable resource, a person to communicate where we're going, kind of I'm a lighthouse for you, I'm a mentor. And that was just super important from day one because I think really because of having a child at a young age matured me in a really interesting way and changed my value system. And if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have done all of that because there's a lot of sexy stuff about being in the restaurant business and owning restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And, I also like if I had been a young guy opening a hot new restaurant, I mean, to be honest, I probably would have been there. I would have been hosting people. I would have been drinking more. I probably would have been meeting people and
Right.
it's just like
All
it can
the
be a
things.
volatile soup.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was very thoughtful about the way I was going to set these restaurants up. And I knew that and I had come from restaurants where, I'd been the general manager and the guy at the door and the guy who people knew they could count on being there. And I wanted to really let people know, like, I am an owner now. I am a business person. And there's a lot of, like martyrdom, I think, sometimes in the restaurant business about
the victim.
being in the restaurant all the time, and that makes me better or that makes me want it more because I work 14, 15 hours a day in my restaurant. And I'm like, those people will burn out, and I'm like building for longevity, and I want to build a business that empowers others. And if I'm removed from the situation and I'm operating more like a board member, that means that that's another salary that someone else can take to be there, and it's another opportunity for advancement for someone else. And so I was really strategic about that early on.
Really
and
smart.
And I have struggled with that over the years. There were many years where I had major survivor's guilt about like, oh, I'm, and I hired like I guess you'd call them like, sort of like therapists, but more like professional therapists to help me work through some of those, like some of the guilt, because I
see mine every Monday morning at 8 o'clock.
There you go. Yeah, it was it was very important. I had a lot of good conversations for several years with someone who kind of helped me work through some of the guilt that I had, that, oh, I'm home at 6 o'clock with my family while other people are in my restaurants working hard, and I'm like just working through that stuff. I have come through to the other side. I've fully embraced knowing what I'm good at, what value I provide to my businesses, and being proud of that, empowering others, being a mentor, and really thinking of myself more as a board member who is going to be there to give high-level, critical kind of feedback and direction, but is not going to be there to turn the lights on and off in the morning and at night. And I think I have only within the last couple years settled into a rhythm that really works around that, and
That's awesome.
and dividing my time between my different interests and businesses.
So what's next? You went to New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
The Bell. How's the Bell going?
That's just turned a year old. That has not been the easiest market to crack. It's a different situation.
That market
Charleston.
scares me.
We could have a lot of chats off. I love New Orleans.
Yeah, I do too.
It's not Charleston, and I think I was spoiled by Charleston. Charleston is busy basically 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Loads of tourists. The airport's always bopping. People are coming here to eat. Our downtown is only so big.
Right.
So, you're capturing a lot of those visitors. We also have locals that like to dine out and can dine out regularly. And so it's I sort of tell other people when they're like, how's business in Charleston? I'm like, dude, this is the best restaurant market in the country.
Yep.
I'll go to New York City and go to restaurants on Tuesday night and they'll be dead.
Right.
When back home in Charleston,
cranking,
there'll be several restaurants, many restaurants that are cranking. And New Orleans has been, aside from just like culturally, New Orleans is awesome. It's cool. I love music. It's got incredible architecture, history. There's a funk that I like about it.
There's a grit there.
Yes,
we're a little bit shinier than New Orleans.
Very much, very much so.
Yeah.
But it's been difficult, but we're making headway. We're just celebrated our year anniversary. It's sort of like I always ask myself, like, am I happy with what we're doing, and do I believe we're delivering? And 100%, I love what we've done. The people who, I wake up every morning and I read all of our Resi reviews and kind of aggregate our feedback from the night before for all the restaurants. And New Orleans is like consistently gets the highest marks of any of my restaurants.
Oh, interesting.
It's just it's a big city and it's not as busy as we need it to be.
Right.
So we're constantly, these things require a lot of babysitting in the early days. And so we're working to get it right, but we are delivering the goods. And now it's about getting more bodies through the door because the people that are coming in are having a great time.
There you go. What would you, and that always for me, because we have restaurants that come out of the gate, not cranking.
Yeah.
And you dig and you dig and like, all right, let's figure out what we need to. How is owning a restaurant different for you than you thought when you were working at Fig?
Interesting question. Well, when I was at Fig, I had a lot less exposure, very little exposure to like a P&L and the real business side.
Right.
My job as the GM at Fig then, and I don't know if it's changed now, was very much about hiring, training, guest satisfaction, pouring wine, being on the floor, connecting with customers, holding staff accountable. There was very little responsibility to the way the business operated. Adam and Mike managed that. Obviously, owning a business now, I realize it's just constant. Like, hey, the steak price has gone up. We need to navigate this, or this price has increased on things, or digging into the more like granular business stuff is very different, and that's not necessarily what I'm best at. I'm like best at like creative thinking and like strategy around that, and like making sure the places remain relevant and cool and fun and the vibe's great and the staff is kind and the culture is strong. That's all my sort of thing. And fortunately, one of my business partners is a very savvy financial person with that skill set. And she is, I've learned a lot from her, and she's minding that segment of the business. But I think that's a big part of it. There's so many differences going from being an employee to an owner.
Oh, yeah.
The stress, it's interesting because I work less. I would actually say I work less physical hours as an owner, but the stress load is much higher.
Much higher.
Feeling the responsibility for so many people, and because I know you have the same thing. We have people who've worked in our restaurants for a decade who've been there from day one.
Yeah.
And you develop I don't like to use the family sort of thing because I have my own family, and I'm like, you have your own family. I'm not going to confuse those lines, but like there is a very strong kinship that you develop, and a very strong link and relationship and care and concern and love for a lot of the people that work in your restaurants. And that is, that takes a heavy toll because I'm, I think a lot about like, is Tom's one of our bartenders at Leon's. He's been there from day one, and he is all-star, and I'm just like, is Tom happy? Is he being taken care of? Does he feel appreciated? Is he making enough money? Is he being given his attaboys? And, all those things. And I think as an owner, I think a lot more about those kind of, larger cultural issues.
How do you think it's changed? So you've been an owner a decade.
Mm-hmm.
How has the industry changed?
Oh, well, Charleston specifically has gotten a lot more competitive. Now I feel like I can remember when I was the young Turk, the young gun on the scene, opening my restaurant.
Your first one.
And now I'm no longer that.
That's
and
right.
now I'm looking back and I'm seeing the next generation, the Verns and the Chubby Fish and that, the Weltons and the Graft guys, the next kind of generation of like leaders of Charleston, which is cool and fun. And in some cases, I'm sort of like, I think I got an early start. So sometimes I'm like, I'm still a young guy, but then I was also like, oh, I'm the old guy on the block. But
I'm the old guy. God almighty.
It's funny taking stock. But then but like what I love is I'm like, okay, cool. Like those are great places. Those are great people. And that makes me happy. But what's changed? It's the things that are obvious. Costs have gone up.
Margins
on
down.
things, and I don't think customer psychology has kept pace with the cost of doing business. And so we're constantly looking at our menus and raising prices where we always have this thing. We're constantly kind of raising things by $1 here and $1 there. And someone on our team might say, like, do you think we can charge that for this? Will people pay that? My answer is always like, we have to charge that for this. If we sell it at this doesn't work. So whether or not people will pay it, I don't know. And if they won't pay it, we're going to have to scrap that
dish it off the menu.
And we'll figure out something else that works. But, that has certainly changed. I think how to capture your audience's attention has changed quite a lot. I think it was like a lot easier to build buzz back in the day. I mean, now social media has democratized the tools to like get in front of people, but that also means like the way tech changes, right? Like I was good at Instagram and I'm like, I like to use Instagram. I makes sense to me. My next up and coming kind of customer set who are in their 20s right now, who I want to be customers of mine for the next 10, 20 years, they're on TikTok and like Snapchat and stuff. And I don't know these. I don't use TikTok. I don't use Snapchat. Mostly because I'm like, I know if I get into it, I'm going to be in it, and I don't need another thing that has me on my phone. I'm already like on Instagram and Substack all day long, so it's like the last thing I need. But that's changing a lot. How do you get in front of customers? How do you get people into your business, especially in a town like Charleston where it's only getting more competitive? There's only more restaurants. That occupies a lot of my brain power.
Me too.
And in those moments, I just come back to maybe just my old school kind of mentality of, you guys, we're going to do what we do. We're going to know who we are. We're going to do it as best as we can. We're going to do it with a smile on our face and a genuine sense of hospitality and welcoming. And people are going to like it or not. But like, we're not going to, this is who we are. This is what we do. Leon's is what it is. If tastes change or whatever, so be it. But, I'm not interested in being the next trendy thing and I'm not interested in gimmicks or any of that. So I'm like, this is what we are. And this is the business I got in to operate. And we're going to operate it this way, and we're going to keep it clean. We're going to keep it nice. We're going to make sure the equipment works. We're going to make sure aprons are clean. We're going to make sure the host at the door greets with warmth and the staff knows what they're talking about and they do it in a kind way. And it's up to the customer if they respond to that.
That's right.
But this is who we are, and this is what we do. So I always kind of just like fall back on that, which are just the old school brass tacks hospitality tenets,
Right. That's right. I mean, we opened in Daco 12 years ago, 13 Italian restaurants have opened since we've opened. And our sales were just fine.
Yeah.
And I
totally.
say the same thing. I'm like, nobody else can put you out of business. Only you can put you out of business.
That's
I mean,
great
sure,
point.
there's a shelf life, right? I don't know though. A lot of our restaurants now are pushing.
We got plenty of restaurants in town that are 20, 30, probably years old.
There was a time where I'm like, if you can make it to 10 years, and now all of my restaurants, not all of them, but the majority are pushing past that.
Yeah, totally. I know. I can't believe. I'm like, oh my God, I never thought I would get to 10 years. That's amazing. And it happened so fast. I'm like, oh wow, we might actually be able to make it to 20 years.
Make it to 20. I know. Oku will be 16 years old in the first quarter of next year, which is wild.
That's cool. What an achievement.
Yeah. I mean, it is so cool. Couple more questions and I'll get you out of here.
I'm having a blast.
I could do this all day.
Same.
What's your hope for our industry? When you look at like where we're going, because the reason I started this podcast, I was on a panel with Katie Button. It was that post-COVID where all the media, the food media, I just felt like everything was bad.
Yeah.
Every article that was written was crappy, toxic. You're not paying,
Yeah.
all of the things. And Katie and I, one day she said, I just wish people would start telling positive stories. Because she said, my experience has been predominantly positive.
Yeah.
And I said, mine too. And so I started this.
Yeah, cool.
What do you hope and see? Where are we going? Oh, and I'm supposed to ask you trends for 26 or
2026 trends. We can get into.
And what do you want to leave in 2025?
Yeah.
I'm so bad. I'm sorry.
No, you're nailing it. What is my hope? Well, I hope I could be as eloquent to answer this question. I would love to leave. There's sometimes I feel like the listicle best of, who's the best, feverish, social media wrought, buzz tracking bullshit.
All the things
would just go away.
Right.
Because I actually think it sort of does more harm than good. And I think it's like wrought a little bit of a kind of, a consumer, like a next generation consumer that's always looking for the next hot thing.
Right.
And I don't love that.
I don't either.
Because that is antithetical to the idea of regulars and relationship building and all the stuff that
and restaurants maturing and becoming better over time.
Totally. And so, like the trend and kind of gimmick stuff that I think really like a lot of like social media and food media has kind of wrought. I hope that goes away. That's maybe a little bit more negative leaning,
that's okay.
And then for specifically to Charleston, I wish I was here at the sort of last gasp of Johnson and Wales being in Charleston and working at Fig, and granted it's not, back then and now are just different in so many ways. But what I saw was a real kind of in Charleston, a cycle of really like professionally minded, committed restaurant people.
I was here
that were working in our kitchens and that were like, the kind of people who are like, I want to own my own restaurant one day, and that were very kind of like singularly focused, which made excellence a lot easier to get. And I think that my hope would be that there's like a continued investment or, pipeline of talent, because I have 3 restaurants in Charleston, and I'm reticent to do much more only because I feel like every time we're going out and hiring in the market, there's not enough experience and talent and stuff that we're looking for to necessitate staffing an entirely new restaurant. And so that that's been a big challenge. Part of that has just been we've changed some of our, we're not necessarily hiring for a resume. We're hiring for like, what's the energy of this person? Because we'll just teach them on site and have really strong culture and a really strong training programs and all that stuff. And I like that too, because I think that's, that makes us competitive. But I guess that's my hope for our industry. I don't see restaurants like going away, and the good news is like AI presents no threat to a restaurant business, and if anything, it's creating maybe some tools that make some of the operation of restaurants a little bit easier on the administrative back end side. So I'm hopeful for the future of restaurants. And we've both benefited from an era when food is like chefs and restaurant people are like rock stars in some ways. It can be a tired cliche, but like it's true.
It's very true.
And people are feverish about restaurants and where you eat and did you go to the new place and did you met this chef and you met this restaurant person. Or Keith McNally writes a memoir and it's a bestseller and it's on he's posting. It's been like one of the best-selling books at McNally Jackson, the New York City book chain, for like months. So there's still I'm grateful for that because food is my life, not just restaurants, but the CPG brand, and my writing is very food centric. And so, I'm grateful for all of that. And then trends that you want to leave.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned the trend that you wanted to leave. I'm not a big trend guy. You said it earlier, but.
No, but I will say because of getting back to that, like I have a heavy diet of media. I'm reading. I've got loads of magazine subscriptions. I'm reading.
Me too.
All the time.
I have so many subscriptions.
And I've always found it essential to stay just broader, kind of culturally aware of what's happening in the world. What is trending? I don't like that word, but like, what are people thinking about? What's working? That might be everything from like what show is up at the Whitney to what's doing well on Broadway. Because I think if you can get a understanding culture in a more broad sense, you can. I think it informs my decisions that I make in the restaurants. 100%. And so I think. I don't know what the hell I was saying, but
keep going. It's all good, man.
Just that, like, I like to try to get a sense of like, I try to read the tea leaves and see where we're going. And I think what's in the future, what does excite me at the moment is some of the, there's part of me, there's the nostalgic romantic in me that likes to think that I would have a restaurant where you call and it's written in the book ledger and stuff. But this is not the world we're living in anymore. That would be possible if it was a mom and pop and I was there, right? But what does excite me is some of the burgeoning tech around restaurants that does not disrupt the customer facing, connection and experience, but in the back end allows us to make better decisions, allows us to be more profitable, allows us to communicate with our customers in a more impactful way. And so I've always been, I've kind of considered, I'm not a techie person, but I track a lot of that stuff. And for example, we were the first people to use Resi in Charleston, and I consider myself like an early adopter to some of this tech stuff. And I invested in Blackbird, and I'm bullish on that. And so I'm hopeful that the future looks very tech inflected, will provide us with some tools to make our jobs easier, better, more fun. We can provide for more people, both employees and customers. And so that to me is like, as we look ahead to the year, it's like what tools will be created to give us more time on the, to spend more time on the human side.
Amen.
And find tools that, can help us deal with some of the back end and administrative and all the stuff that, the less sexy part.
Right.
I'm excited about that.
Me too. And I also think it just makes for a bright future for us. Because the more disconnected we become on these, I think the more people will crave breaking bread, sitting at a table.
Yes.
What keeps you up at night? What are you afraid of?
My business is going under.
Me too.
And losing all my
every day of my life.
Not being able to provide for my family.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing I struggle with. And I am constantly telling my wife, I'm like, okay, if the businesses go under, and especially because COVID, right? Like my worst nightmare came true.
Oh, yeah.
And like, God forbid anyone should have to like experience that thing. But it's, overnight, it's like, oh, my restaurants are closed.
Done.
I sold my house and I was going to move to Kentucky because I was like, well, I'm out of business.
Right.
Restaurants are not meant to last more than a few days without doing any revenue, let alone a couple months.
Right.
Obviously, we know how that all worked out, and there was monies and takeout and all this kind of stuff. And when we did reopen, it came roaring back.
Yeah.
Those were very good couple years post-COVID. But that's what keeps me up at night is not. The business is not working or going out of fashion, people not liking them, people having a bad time. I mean, I start my day in the most dangerous, stressful way, which is opening my email and reading the shift notes and the resi, because I take that stuff so personally. Right. And when, it's like, it can ruin my day if a customer had a bad time.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, it's like the first thing I do, and I'm in touch with my team, is we have to reach out to this person, and we first need to like acknowledge what we did wrong, and we need to apologize, and we need to invite them back, and like then what did they say, and I'm obsessed about customer satisfaction, and so that like definitely that keeps me focused.
I was emailing. I got an email. I think when you make yourself a public person, you're a public person. You're accessible.
You invite a little bit of that
in. You do, and so it doesn't. My former HR director was like, Steve, like every employee has my cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, you make yourself too available, and I'm like, but that's the deal. If you ask people to trust you one way, you've got to be willing to hear it when you didn't do the thing.
For sure.
And somebody had checked into one of our hotels and did not have a good time.
Yeah.
And so yesterday afternoon, I was, emailing this and let's go there and call the person, invite them back for a stay.
For sure.
The same thing.
You got to do it.
You never escape that.
You don't. Misery loves company because it makes me feel better. Because I'll tell you a recent story. I was in Nashville. I went to the new Pastis in Nashville.
I have not been. I heard it's booming.
Booming. It was a Tuesday night, and it was crushing and beautifully done. Of course, Keith has gotten involved and helped him design those restaurants, but I think Steven is really like Steven Sard.
Yeah.
And his organization is operating Pastis now. And it was a cool room, whole thing. Front of the host staff was amazing. We had a bad experience with a rude bartender for no reason. And it was I don't like send feedback much, but I also really value when we get what I call reasonable feedback.
Right.
Because we collect and aggregate all negative feedback, but sometimes negative feedback, you're in this business long enough, you can read it and say, that's a person that we cannot make happy.
Right.
And
correct.
frankly is not our customer.
Right.
But that's not always. Sometimes it's that, and we say, let it be. They're just not our customer. Right. And there's plenty of times when I'm like, this is a reasonable person and we fucked up.
Yeah.
And we need to reach out to them.
Absolutely.
And so when I give feedback, which is rare, I'm always like, you need to be as reasonable as possible and acknowledge all the great stuff. And so I had this bad time, not a terrible time, but it reminded me, I'm like, oh, even a guy who is at the top of our game and one of the best restaurateurs in the country, if not the world, is capable of
absolutely
missing the mark.
Absolutely.
Which makes me feel a little bit better.
Ditto.
And really that was it. That was all I was going to say is that, no one is batting 1,000
Hell no.
every day of
On
the week.
any given day.
But what matters is that you never get too big for your britches,
Yep.
and you take all that stuff and you take it and it's important to you, and you dig into it and you take it serious. And I'm just like constantly reminding myself, it's like, just because you have a busy restaurant doesn't mean you can't screw it up. And that you're not, like, so you better, I'm just like constantly telling myself, you better stay on top of things, because you're not guaranteed to be in business tomorrow,
I feel like I'm one bad decision away from blowing it all up.
For sure.
All the time.
Absolutely. Same.
What does the word hospitality mean to you?
Hospitality. Well, obviously very different from service. I feel like you know it when you feel it. And I've always, and I'm the culture, I'm the guy with the bullhorn talking about culture with my team, especially now, like more my director of operations, who then kind of disseminates my, I guess, what I'm saying. But I think it's when you've got sort of a selfless concern for the comfort and enjoyment of someone else, with no expectation of receiving anything in the pride you get of making someone else feel good. That's where like hospitality happens.
I love that.
And so I'm that's important. It's one thing you have to do. You have to take the food order, put it into the computer correctly, bring it in a timely manner, bring them the check when they need it, check them out, right? And that's all, of course, like that's number one thing. But like that is not enough. There has to be that layer of grace, to use, to bring it back to you. Grace, care, comfort, concern, and it needs to be genuine. And you got to hire for that, because not everybody has that in their DNA.
Not at all.
And that's
most resumes aren't going to tell you that.
No way. So you try to discern that in the interview phase, and then time will tell if some people just like to engage and make other people happy, and like I'm bummed out if other people are bummed out. And so I'm like, I like for people to, I like a vibe. I like smiliness. I like happiness. I like comfort. I like welcoming. I like inclusiveness. And so that's what, to me, that's hospitality.
I love that. Even the body language.
Yeah.
No. I mean, because I talk a lot about the transformative power of hospitality, meaning when someone receives it, how it can change the way they view the world, right? And that may sound dramatic or but when you make another term I use is well-being restored, right? You see a customer come in and traffic sucked or they've had a shitty day, and when they intuitively, because I think it's subconscious, they realize, oh, you're going to take care of them. The shoulders drop.
Yes.
They exhale, and they suddenly are like, wow, okay, I'm okay.
Yes.
And when people receive that, it changes them.
Agreed.
It really does. And I feel so honored to like be in that space. That's why I always say that what we do is an act of service, not the technical stuff. Being in leadership, giving hospitality, it is an act of giving. And I feel so privileged to be able to give that, because you said it. The way it feels to give it is like, I almost feel like it's a selfishness.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's like
I'm benefiting.
I see how happy you are, but I feel just as good.
Totally.
If you are wired, Will Guidara said, if you are called to serve, if you're called to serve, when you give it and you watch the response, it is so life-giving.
100%. I'm thinking of my parents were so, they were so inclusive, and we were constantly, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, vacations, they would like invite people who didn't have, like people from our church who were friends, who maybe didn't have a family, or if someone was visiting. I was like, there were always like people around that my parents were like, come over, come on, don't be silly, and I kind of had that energy in my house. And you're right. It like, in some ways, I feel like it's more benefiting me. Like I love having people over, cooking for them, putting the music just so, sort of like what other people would consider like, oh, you've slaved over this whole evening. But I'm like, no, this is like, this is gets amazing. Me going. I like to look after you. Like this is like pumping me up. And yeah, that's great. So, I mean, how lucky are we that we found a business where that is, so lucky. You know, that works.
I feel so lucky. Last question. So I wrote a book, Say Grace. This is the name of the podcast. So I remember Sunday supper, being at grandma's, we're all holding hands, and she would choose one of the kids to say grace. And what we were really talking about is what we were thankful for. So what are you thankful for?
Oh God, so many things. How long do we have? So my great grandmother had an awesome saying that has informed a lot of the way that I like commune with the people I love. She would say, you got to pass your roses to the living. So when you have a nice thought or you think something nice about people, you tell them, right? And I will even say, like, we were in LA recently. I was with my wife and we were at a coffee shop and this guy walked in and he was like, had such a cool vibe. He was like dressed really well. And I was just like, I was like, dude, your whole vibe is awesome. I was like, you look so handsome today. Like you're killing it. So I like to put it out there and pay those compliments. But, you know, I'm thankful for my family. I have an incredible family. I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for the team that I work with, especially some of my long-term lieutenants that I've developed quite a relationship with. I've traveled with, I've mentored, have been through, you know, thick and thin with. I'm thankful to live in a city like Charleston where we can do what we do and be successful at it. I'm thankful for my success. I'm thankful for my upbringing. I'm thankful for the love of my parents. I'm thankful for my 2 kids. I'm like, I could go on and on. I feel like a very, very lucky person. And I'm just thankful for this life.
Me too. We have a gift for you.
Oh, okay.
So
it's not just the smart water.
No, it's not just the smart water.
Oh, wow. Smithy.
From our friends at Smithy.
Incredible.
So this is a cast iron.
Wow.
That has your name on it.
Oh, cool, you guys. Thank you.
So we hope you'll enjoy cooking with it at home.
I am the cook of the house.
Good.
And I'm a huge Smithy fan. They're a really cool business. So, that means the world. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for that.
Well, thanks for being here, Brooks. And thanks for joining us at Say Grace. If you like what you heard, tell a friend, pass it on. We're on all the major platforms. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. We hope you join us next time as we continue to dive deeper into the inspirational stories about the transformative power of hospitality.